All right, welcome to episode 17 of APS Radio. I am Jim Burneka, and I am joined today by Dr. Mynda Ohs. Good afternoon.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
It's Mynda.
It's mid. Listen to you.
It's
It just turned afternoon for you.
Yeah.
It's mid-afternoon here for me because Mynda's joining us here from Las Vegas.
Yes.
And I am in exotic Beaver Creek, Ohio.
Nice and warm and ready for your bathing suit weather.
Oh, yeah, clearly. Well, maybe tomorrow because it's Ohio spring, so you never know. It changes every day. Now, you first came on my radar actually for my wife.
Oh.
Do you know that? Because she ended up, you didn't know that. I'm just telling you, this breaking news.
Breaking.
Ended up getting fully involved. Your first book.
Yes.
So just to kind of get perspective of kind of the stuff that I go through. So why don't we even jump into your background before you got to where you're actually writing about it?
Yeah.
Because you started medic, right?
Yeah, I was an EMT on a private ambulance for 5 years. And then I also worked in an ER as an ER tech. And that's how I met my husband. He was a medic for the local fire department. So we would run calls together. So that's where we met and we started dating. We've been together 27 years, married 25, which, you know, in this career is a hard thing to accomplish. But so I stayed home with the kids for 12 years, raising kids. My husband was doing his career, climbing the ladder, and he was on an incident management team. So he would go to all the big fires when we lived in California, right? So he was gone all summer. And I just started going to school because I needed something to do with myself. And I thought, what do I want to do? So I really, really like counseling and, you know, helping others and stuff like that, helping them deal with stuff. And then I wanted to work with first responders because being a first responder myself, I had calls that I still have today that, you know, they don't go anywhere. And sometimes they're triggered by a movie. Sometimes they're triggered by a smell or something that I see. So I was like, we need to talk about this more. I want to help with this. But then when I started doing this, how the book came about was I had been teaching and I do critical incident debriefs. And I had gone out to Bakersfield. There was a big fire and some firefighters lost homes and it was just a lot going on. And I was talking and doing a debrief and I started talking about, now when you go home, how are you going to talk about what's going on with this incident to your family? And a lot of people were like, well, we don't talk about that to our family. we don't bring that home. And I was like, yeah, you actually do bring it home. You just aren't talking about it. So I jokingly was like, okay, let me take my therapist hat on and put my wife hat. So I started explaining some of the things that my husband and I had struggled with. And there was two guys all the way in the very back. And they started holding up their phone. And I thought, well, I think they're recording me. So afterwards, they came running up. A couple people came running up and they were just like, I had to record you. I didn't video. I just voice recorded you because I swear you were in my house this morning because it was verbatim what my wife says. And it was literally at that moment, I thought, I think we're fighting about all the same things in first responder families, but no one told us, you know, how to do this. So I was like, let me write a book. I feel like if we can help some of the younger generations not make some of the mistakes we all made with the job and the fighting and the, you know, just the misunderstandings of the career.
Absolutely. And it was, I know my wife got a lot from it. It's interesting with her, and I don't want to make this about her, but she knew me beforehand, and then she's seen me, you know, in this job over the years. And, you know, it's interesting getting her perspective about things regarding this stuff. But that's a whole different podcast for a whole different time.
Yeah.
But what actually brought me here today with you was, you know, I saw a post, and it's been several months ago, but I saw that you were coming out with a new book, and that book, The Fully Involved, that wasn't really for me. That was for my wife. But this book, I was like, this is important because I'm at that point to where this is meaningful, and I'm also in a point in which, well, I should probably actually just say what the title is, what it is. It's But when the call stops, there's
Yep.
a nice little, and it's all about retiring as a first responder.
Yep.
And so I'm in the, not a lot of time left. Kind of down. I have a calendar, just like most people, a little clock that's telling me on my phone. But I'm also dealing with it, being as far as that, being peer support coordinator and wellness guy. Like I'm seeing these firefighters leave, and a lot of them are conflicted, and a lot of them are having issues. And I've even talked to them after they retire, and it's not necessarily what they thought it was going to be. So if you don't mind, I want to just kind of dive in the book. I don't want to cover the whole book because I want everybody to actually go out and read it.
Yes.
But we'll just hit a few subjects if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
So let's talk about just preparing for retirement. When should you actually really go, all right, this is a thing, like we need to be prepared. Also knowing that in the back of your mind with what we do, our job could end any time now.
Yep.
From injury or illness.
And that's what I say. It's like you guys are professional athletes, right? You train like it, you work like it, and you could have a career-ending injury any day that you show up could be the last day. And the reason I wrote the book was watching my husband. Right now, you said, when's the right time? Really, day one is when the right time is, because that's how you set up your PERS and your retirements and your deferred comps and your 401ks and all those things. Because as first responders, one of the nice things, the positives, is you guys can work a ton of overtime and make a lot of extra money. You can make a whole salary for us if we wanted to stay home. The problem is a lot of first responders get addicted to living off of overtime. And when you retire, you don't get overtime, right? It's base salary. So you got to know, you've got to save money so you can, if you want to live better than just base salary. So you need to start figuring that stuff out. In the book, even one of the guys, Steve, talks about he wished he'd have put like half of his overtime in deferred comp every time he took an overtime. But theoretically though, that you said that clock on your phone, it's in the book where I talk about my husband having it on his phone, and he hit 0, right? And so I was like, oh, okay, now what are you going to do? And he was like, well, I don't know. It just feels good that I hit 0. And Mama, I think I'm going to keep working. I still can do the job. I said, all right, well, when are you going to retire? He says, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And that's the line I heard for 4 years. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And so, it became crunch time for us. And so I think a lot of first responders do that. I think that you guys talk, come on, you guys talk about from the day you get hired, you guys brag and dream about retirement. I could just leave this place any day. I could pack up my stuff and leave and never look back. And that's just not the reality of it. So when it comes time, they've not mentally prepared or prepared what they're going to do after, because you guys can retire early.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of times it's 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're retired, and people can retire before they're 50 years old.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother career.
Yeah. And then a lot of them are going to retire so they can work somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we're in an interesting profession. But I kind of, with your husband, Jeff, his idea of, I hit my time, if I want to stay, I could stay. And, if I feel good, and he wanted to stay. And that's for me. I think a lot of us out there, I want to hit that goal, but I want to make sure I'm in a good position financially to where if I want to leave, I could, because I feel like a lot of us are dependent on a drop program where we have to stay, we have to get our kids, through college, whatever it may be. There's a reason all the time. There's never truly a right time. And the kind of with the injury and the illness, that you're really gambling.
Yeah, you really are. My husband, thank goodness, knock on wood, he's never really been injured on the job, which, that rarely happens. And so and that I break that down in the book where there's 3 ways to retire. It's lifer, a medical retirement, or PTSD. And, again, you're right. My husband used to say, oh, 2 bad shifts, that's all it'll take. But when it came time, when we were talking about moving, he really, really struggled with the idea. We had several breakdowns, emotional breakdowns that he had to let go of. He did 34 years and walk away. He doesn't miss the place or the job. He misses the people. That's all he misses.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've had a little bit of a preview about retirement. I'm still working, but I've gone from working, 24, 48-hour shift to now I'm a 40-hour guy.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is a 40-hour position, and my kids go to school. So we're basically, if we're off, we're all off. So you're laughing. So
yes, I am.
So we've gotten to where, she was used to me being on shift and having her time and doing her thing and watching her shows. And I was used to, being off in the mornings, and everybody's gone and I could do whatever I want. We both had freedom, and now we don't have any freedom, and we smother each other. So it is a sneak preview of what retirement looks like.
Yeah, it is. And that was honestly my biggest fear. And I talk about it in the book, where as a spouse, I didn't want to seem like nothing ever made me happy, because all of us spouses complain, or significant others, families, we complain that you guys work too much. You're never home. You don't help with the kids. But somewhere in there, we figure it out, right? And we just get a rhythm. And then you guys retire, and then you're around all the time. You have your opinions all the time. You have how you want to do things, or how you think we should do things. So I was really terrified about that. I did not want to become his new hobby. And you're right. I had to start taking Wednesdays off in the middle of the week, just so that I could have that quiet time that's mine to do whatever I wanted, because I really did not appreciate, when you're in the midst of it, how much I really did enjoy that quiet time, with whether it be just with myself or just me and the kids.
That kind of, if you don't mind, I want you to touch on your work brain and your home brain.
Yeah.
Because if you would describe what that is, but then how that still, even when you're retired, it doesn't go away.
Yeah. So I explain it like work brain, home brain. Work brain is adrenaline filled, right? It's because you're on the job. The minute you put the uniform on, you've trained your brain and your body, and you get in this mode. Work brain is, it's more accelerated than the average person. It's way up here, way up top, with all the adrenaline. Now, when you're in adrenaline for 24, 48-hour shifts, you are task driven, you're operational, you're not emotional. You kind of check your emotions and you go to work. And it's part of why you guys all have so much fun and joking and laughing, because that's the adrenaline. It makes you more energetic. It makes you more focused and humorous and all those things. And then there's home brain. And what I explain is work brain is like a drug, and you all are on it. So you all think you're all normal, and everything you guys do, it's normal. Takes the body 18 to 24 hours to come down off of work brain and to expel all of the adrenaline and the cortisol and the hormones that are produced for you to be in that state. So when you guys walk in the door, one of the mistakes we make as family and spouses is we expect our husbands, wives, mothers, fathers to walk through the door, but it's the first responder still walking in the door that has no emotions, that's operational, that's just coming in, and we all want to tell them about what we've been doing, or what's been going on, or what the day looks like. We have stories, and my husband used to always be like, "Hey, let's get to the end of the story. What is it that you need from me? what do you need from me?" And I was always so hurt, and it seemed like he was never happy being home, but it was the crash off of work brain. So day one, I always tell families and significant others, as well as first responder, is day one is kind of a crapshoot. You don't know if you're going to be up to go do something. Maybe you have tons of energy, But day one is your transition coming off of work brain, and you're still operational. And it's hard to integrate back into your family with that. So when retirement happens, lots of people are like, once I leave, I'm going to leave all that behind. You don't. You think about, you did 25, 30 years, right? You've already trained, it's muscle memory. You've already trained your brain how to operate in that state of mind. So getting out of it permanently is a process. It's not just the minute you leave and turn in your gear and go home. It's a process. And, like what I've watched my husband do is, you guys are used to 2 speeds. You go or you stop. There's no middle in there. There's no second or third gear. And watching my husband try to navigate that, he's called the doctor like 4 times. He thinks something's wrong with him because he feels so weird. He feels so off. He feels like in such a uncomfortable state because he's not used to this middle ground. So it takes a little bit for you to come off of work brain. The other thing that first responders don't realize is that when you leave and you come out of work brain, all those calls that you did not process or deal with, your body's like, oh, cool. We've been out of work brain for long enough. Let's start unpacking these. And so it will just start kicking calls out that you thought you forgot about, that you're like, I've had guys come in and say, this call was 25 years ago and I'm having nightmares about it. Why? It's because you slowed down long enough. That's why.
That's I've heard that as well, that is an issue. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the stuff comes out of the blue, and it's all the stuff that we just bury and we just swallow down, and we think that it's gone, it's never coming back, and then, like you said, you slow down enough, and it shows up.
Yeah. And I think we had a big crisis coming because, all over the nation, we had that big hiring freeze in 2009-ish era. And so we have this big gap. And so we got all these new kids coming on, they're all young, but we're going to have a mass exodus here pretty soon in the next 1 to 5 years, where a lot of your retirees are going to start leaving. And those people, 10 years and more, 10 plus years, you came from the suck it up generation. You came from the rub some dirt on it. So that generation has got so much to unpack. And that's what I'm really fearful of, is that they've not been around long enough, and the departments don't have enough mental health programs going for them to have learned enough skills, I think, to deal with it on their own.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm of that generation, and I see how it is now, where it's finally that stigma is going away and we're actually able to talk about this. But yeah, my age and older, definitely that was what we did.
Yeah, that's what I did. It's like, especially a female in the business, I did it in the 90s. There weren't a lot of females doing it. So my partner literally would tell me, don't you dare cry. Don't you dare let them see you cry. And he used to send me in on calls we got canceled on. He was like, you need to go in there and go see this and toughen up. And some of those were very traumatizing calls, right? That's appalling nowadays. We'd be like, don't do it.
Oh my gosh.
You've done it. You've done it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely a difference in how I treated calls early on in my career and at the end. Not that I'm done, but yeah, I got to the point where it was like, I don't want to see that. If I don't have to see it, like if I understand, if I'm the medic in charge, if I have to, that's cool.
Right.
But if I have an option, I'm good. I don't want to see it.
I equate it to exposure, right? You guys limit your exposure to, hazardous materials or smoke, all those things. You're very cautious, and you report and you write it down and you keep track of, and you're very cautious about your exposure to those things. But I don't see, it's getting better, like you said, but that's an exposure. It's a mental exposure, and they add up just like, a hazardous or chemical exposure would do.
So I want to touch on some other things that we deal with when all of a sudden we're not working. What about that burden of guilt from being away for all those years? And now trying to overcompensate and make everything right.
Oh my gosh. You're preaching to the choir right now because once my husband started the retirement process, and especially when I wrote the first book, my husband had a lot of guilt because there were a lot of things that he didn't realize he was doing. Again, why I wrote the book. That book is also for firefighters. You would learn a lot by reading it also, because you get a wife perspective, and then my husband writes parts. So you get the first responder perspective in the first book. And then my kids wrote chapters about growing up in it. But so, my husband and I struggled in the beginning. It was hard. And so now he says, and he dotes on me. And I know there's probably tons of wives and husbands that are like, don't be ungrateful. It's what lots of people ask for. But he is very excessively dotes on me and, caters. So I asked him when we moved here to Vegas, it got worse. And I was like, what is up? Like, you do not have to wait on me like this. You do not have to I don't know what's going on. And he said, I have a lot of making up to do. And I feel bad for the things I've done, the things I've said, that I wasn't there, I wasn't available. And I think part of that coming out of work brain, again, is you got to sit with yourself and you got to kind of do that reflection about you and where you've been and where you're going. And that's just a normal human developmental stage that everybody has to go through. But for first responders, there's a heck of a lot to reflect on about your life and career and things you should have done or wished you'd have done. And so I tell my husband all the time, I have no ill feelings. It was our life. It had its ups and downs. It's what I signed up for, getting into this career with you, But yeah, he's always trying to make up. So the thing is that I tell him is 27 years we've been together. I told him, babe, if I was going to leave you, I'd have left you when it was really bad, right? Like 10 years in when it was terrible. And then we had 2 little kids and you were working all the time and we didn't have any family and we were broke. And I was like, why would I leave now? It's like, we've taken this journey together. We've survived it. You don't need to make up for anything that you've done. And so, I mean, that's not always the case for some people, I know, but I think it's about, and I talk about it in the book, you've got to make sure your relationship is in a good place before you retire. If you've got cracks in the armor somewhere in your relationship and you need to see counseling before you actually retire, because then you're home all day with each other. And you don't want to get divorced at the end, And
I've seen that happen several times now where, you have somebody who's been with their spouse for 25, 30 years throughout, the whole career essentially. And then all of a sudden they're done retiring. And that also ends the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at this now through your book and just kind of realizing, well, it's because now all of a sudden they're with each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's too much. They're used to having that space. And when there's no space.
Yeah.
And
we grow accustomed to it. We grow accustomed, especially if you've been together for a long time, we grow accustomed to, like you said, watching our own shows. I like to put the thermostat where I want to put the thermostat, just those simple things of, if I want to eat cereal for dinner, I can. And so that's all different, the dynamics between the two of us. The other thing that I didn't realize, because I thought we were going to have more time together when he retired, but we actually have less because he took a job. He is an emergency manager at UNLV. And of course I have my practice, so I work. So we really only see each other at night and on the weekends. And so I kind of was like thinking it was going to be more, but it's actually not. And I'll tell you what sucks the most is not having midweek days off together to go out on dates. Now we have to go out with the rest of everybody else on the weekends.
I feel you there.
Small, right? It's a small thing.
No, 100%. Because I'm used to like having a weekend. I work a day, then I have a weekend. I work another day, I have another weekend. And it's my own weekend. And now it's like, no, you get Saturday and Sunday like everybody else.
Like everybody else. So if you try to go to the movies or dinner, we actually have to make reservations now because it's a weekend where
I've been Yeah, it's normalized. And
It is.
and that's actually a great segue, because the next thing I want to talk about is how to act normal again, how to
Oh,
interact with civilians.
uh-huh.
That's not something that I think we're really, I mean, it depends on, I guess, the person, but it's not something I'm great at.
Yeah.
I can't have my normal conversation with a normal person, because I'm gonna cuss and just be completely inappropriate.
Yes, because that's what we do. Um, but it is definitely a transition of figuring that out of um, what population do you want to hang out with also, right? There's some people that maybe get more into their churches, or the other thing we're seeing is a ton of people who still have kids under 18 retiring because they just had kids later, or it's a second marriage. So some people I've seen get involved in their kids' sports, like coaching and things like that. So you got to interact with parents. So you got to find that filter. You got to find that politically correct filter to some extent, because you can't act like you're at the kitchen table or at briefing or whatever and just be talking about the gruesome stuff, or being the inappropriate names we have for certain populations and things like that. Like you can't do it. You can't do it, and it's really hard, and you have to be really mindful, and it's very stressful.
No, yeah, you're right. That dark humor too.
Yes. I have a funny story. My husband, it was like the first week he got hired, and there's three guys in there. One, his boss is a retired Coast Guard, and the other guy is a retired firefighter from the East Coast somewhere. So my husband gets there, and mind you, he only took 2 weeks off between the fire department and then going here. So he shows up, and like the first day, it's about lunchtime, and he's kind of walking around. He goes, so hey, what do you guys do for lunch around here? And the other guy goes, well, usually when you're hungry, you eat. And so he had no idea how to like have lunch on his own. It's something so simple, right? As that,
Yeah.
he had to start packing lunches. It was so foreign to him. And I know it sounds silly, but it's things like that. For 34 years, he has either made lunch or sat down with the crew for lunch and dinner.
You had a routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
now
then
he's
it's
had to
all
create
new
something different.
routine.
Yeah.
I do see, your husband reminds me just a lot of other firefighters that they retire just to work some more and maybe do something different, or whatever. I feel like there's either two types of retirees,
Mhm.
where you retire just to work some more, do something different, or like there are the handful that retire and they're done.
Yeah.
They